Put your hands together and welcome Selector Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Nice. If you're hearing me, clap. All right, so I'm going to call to you in phases, and I'm going to see which side of the best persons who know to call to people. All right, so you over here, you're on one line, next here, and when the VIPs arrive from here, and then over here. All right, so over here, good afternoon over here. I'm not tourists. Good afternoon right here. If you listen to what transpired earlier, you know any loud sound you make your win. All right, over here, good afternoon. I tell you, all right. You don't have to do anything else, you win. Automatically. Clap yourselves, you are the winner. And I must say that we have prize today for the best clappers. So whenever I ask you to clap, you go ahead and clap loudly. And the prize, I know Mr. Hall did not announce, but our teacher will be driving away this evening. So you know, I'm going to leave your car in your driveway still. All right, so let me say it's good to be here. And of all that we have been through, we are alive and well. So shall we just give the Lord a nice clap offering? All right. Yeah, you don't want that. Yes. I want to start with a giveaway. I know you are eating and so, but you can pause a moment. You can pick up from where you left off. I want to give away something. I know this is a time when giveaways must. So those who have your cell phone, can you wave your cell phone so I can see them? Now wave them and clear screen. And let's get ready. Some of you know to type fast. This is when I'm going to test the best typists that Torrent have. Hold them up now keenly that they can see those who are participating. And clear your screen. I could get the light so I can see clearly these digits. But that's all right, I can see. All right, you getting your bag, miss? Hurry up and take out. Are you me waiting on? Nice. All right, clear your screen now. And this evening we are going to flow. It's a flowing evening this evening. So just go ahead and clear your screen. Let me see those who are participating. Hold them up. All right, good. Go down now. Clear your screen and get ready. You must have star 1 to 1 star. That is necessary. If you don't have that, you will not be able to get it. Here we go now. And I shall be a little quiet because other persons may know. 7, 5, 4, 6, 2, 2, 0. That's the number for the school. You're coming to school and you're running a little late. You're coming and you're running a little late. You call Mr. Hall, you call the office and tell the office that traffic is on Buret Road and you're getting a little roll up. All right, so you can just save that, put it on speed dial. You want phone card, you stop at Flow and Digicel. This is a staff development workshop. So did you get it, miss? Did you get it? What way you pick up your baggie? It's your bag, nice and fine. All right. But I wanted to look this way a little, because I'm going to tell you some nice things. Because as comedian, I look at life different, so I get different results. Ladies and gentlemen who are worried about COVID when I'm through this evening, you will not be worried about it again. First and foremost, anything made in China, it will last now. And if COVID, if you get clothes and it come from China, it not going to last long. Shoes, it not going to last long. So now that COVID come here and it come from China, don't worry about it. It not going to last long. But I want to beg you for one thing. Try not catch it. If you catch you, so you're not going to last long either. And I study this thing here. And then I'll be alone there. And I have to ensure. So what I did during the whole time of the trauma, I went through the house and I get a picture of cartridge paper and I cut it up in different pieces and I write different places on it. So the kitchen, I put up the big sign, Pegasus. The bedroom, I put up the big sign, tax office. So you know, say if you work here and you want your day mash up, just go in a tax office. You spend the whole day in there. So anybody see me turn and go in a tax office, they know me now come back out now. And sometimes I have to wonder the tax office, if they have a thing when people come, them say, all right, we're going to send up that one up and down. You spend half the across road just to go before the tiller. Fish will tell you, say, no, you're at the wrong place. This is done in Tansan Spring. And then you muscle the traffic now and go up to Tansan Spring. And you wait again the next 2 hours. And when you go, she look at you and say, so why did they send you up here? You have to go back to Crossroad. It's not here, it is done. We are different. But at times we socialize now. Anybody, what's the thing that stand out most to you in this whole COVID thing? And let me say if you think like me. Mr. Hall, they think that I will arbitrarily arrest a homeless man. Same on the street. And the man said, officer, you know, say yes, we don't even know. One thing with the man about arbitrarily, they put him in a truck, but you let us take him out back. But the man said, I just want to know, say yes, we live. So when I tell you, we don't walk. So what was troubling now is the same homeless man celebrate again and drops in a half tree. So me started thinking myself, so when God will figure out this thing, me no break again for something where fire, you have to break again. You only what you use? When I say, what is your audience? In chewing gum? In chewing. So have you ever purchased great technique in Africa? This is the final one there. Then, when you buy drugs, you buy drugs. Not everything about. So where do you buy great technique? Where do you buy great technique? Where you buy drugs? I will take you up there and follow you. In advance, ladies and gentlemen, this is the police that are very gentle. There was a dance going on in Spanish Town, and the police go down at the night, and the boy they run off and left the sound and the liquor. I never know the police will be so gentle. If you see how the man is up in liquor, and you know, they must say, only one machine will be there. When we don't anybody cause kids are not getting nobody. So you don't put them together and put it in. And I say it's a police nice. This pandemic has shown we are holding back, so we can be carried. And we are partial. Me visit Jamaica, you want to far when they come here. You know, by those years, you can work this man, you come back for you, you're going to look at them. Now, you don't want to see nobody. That's the man here, that's the man that comes in just already. If I walk up and have you, but nobody like carry up. We can't just say, we different, you know. Black Jamaica man, we different. We are the Prime Minister, as a Prime Minister. When you go with me, I don't want you to come to wearing a mask. We supposed to continue because it helped me. The wearing of mask helped me. May have 5,000 dollars to free. And now I'm missing my home. I'm just throwing myself. If I smell it, I will say, like, you can see it so on the soil. You know, you can't take a pass if you don't know for your friend. We have to talk about these things. I mean, I really have things, you know. And Jamaican so take the student master style. First time you go to school, you go to the bank to run into business. But you will have called your ask, say, it's inside full. Then they were the cut out there, and they asked outside full. Everybody, just everybody, come outside. You're going to place and then first I check your temperature. Come this way. COVID coming with a whole lot of changing. Now, anybody here, let me see the hands up all those who are on Facebook. Come, Facebook. Nice. Facebook is nice. What you see? Rev, the other day, a friend of mine buy one expensive vehicle. Expensive. And when we see the vehicle, we go beside it. I'm in lean panic. I'm going to take a picture. And you know the next thing what you're going to do when you take a picture, you post it. Miss, you post the picture. Ladies and gentlemen, I get congratulations from all in the diaspora. Everybody can congratulate you and ladies must drive good. Me not tell nobody say you know me just post funny. And me get, when they get to me now and will go congratulations and come down, I say me have to put a stamp into it. I go up on the platform and I type and say, is there anyone here has ever gone to the Pegasus? And when you're leaving, you stand at the front and take a picture. Does that mean you buy the Pegasus? I saw them come off of a page. Everybody get phone now that can take picture. Did you study it and know why they put camera in a phone? I'm going to tell you why. First time, when people did, hell if they find one picture, they put in a program. They have to dig up the whole house. I'll call a foreigner ready to take the last picture of him. So them give you picture phone now. Everywhere you go, you book. You take picture. So when people dead now, you realize when you look at the program, people now go funeral with food much like last time. Everybody have a program. If you want people war, make them go and yes, the program finish. As they read, I was serving program. And the program now, it's part Madam Guidance Council. You see the program? If you want to know people business, sit down with people with the program. See them take up the program in a church, while the service are going. Every minute, and then looking at make up on the picture them all 40 times. Every minute then take your call look. And so you see them when the funeral over. And you see one group of people hear them and looking at it, see brother here. And he never get free come. I never listen and he run off. That's why he don't come. See sister here. And she didn't get pregnant for man with the plaza. Any business you want here about nobody. Waiting to see 5 Jamaican one funeral program. You draw nearby. You drive your sister, yeah? Everything nice, everything. You want to see? Your last Mr. program? And memories, not you. Yes, let me tell you. We different. But COVID, man, it mash up something for me. Because where I live, there's a church right across my house. And being as I'm from St. Elizabeth, when people dead, they bury them round the back. But a town we come close to them as place, specially made for them, dove cat and minaret. And what they start to do now, before COVID, them used to carry the food come on the church. And as the service finished, them serve the food right at it, and then they leave and go to the cemetery. So when me they home, and me hear one horse and sing a come. Me not have to know who. Me just get dressed. And me go over there. And then me eat my food. 1 week when me going, Me going late as me going, me bust a ball. And lady look and say, we say that the family he's from. And on that time program, me see, it was so long. Me I wonder when them are going to start, sir. And your man like the cold food, steam supposed to come up in my fear. So when me the Prime Minister sent ban funeral from church, it affect me bad. But when it come back and it announced 50 can't go, you remember that time? Me send the first message right. I ready you see, and I stand up on the gate and I start count. And when it reach 49, me step over, and Miss one lady behind me, I come, me say, Miss, this is 50. But me now make the food pass me, you know. We different, you know. You ever see Jamaicans? How nice them be in our church service? At a funeral, everybody sit up. If the one who dreadful there, wait till everybody arm the house with the food and shit. And the person that pass with the tray 2 times and not stop. And 2 times the pass with it now, you know. And I ask him to stand up. And the man that don't take it 2 times, you know. And I ask him to there. You know, so Miss Burke, and then last week on the second week. When Jamaicans talk about food, we different. And you see people come and they are calling for their brother who never come. Give me one for my son because he didn't want to come and he didn't come. And we pack up on God. We pack up on God. That's why you see me, as I stand here this evening and the function is recorded publicly. And if you ask me between wedding and funeral, which one me prefer? Me don't love wedding. You see wedding, I want time and go. You see funeral, from the person dead, every night you go to my house to get some juice and fish and bread, sandwich, everything, sugar. Wedding, I cater 35 people, 35 food. Give me funeral, man. Give me them. Anybody here love funeral? Oh, there's another. Stand for me, my brother. And I don't want you are on the bus now. Yeah. I want friends over not a funeral. Let's put it in belly. But it look like you start recently. Just start recently. But then certain things you didn't just desire for you see big people with it. And you just want it. You're gonna wait to get it. Every morning you get up, you go before the mirror. By the time about 12, 13, you are looking for anything that come out. And you don't want your mother say this now, and then buy it from you go. And you go before the glass and do so. And push your head under your arm, receive, if not here. And when me turn big now, me realize that something going wrong now. We sorry, so we get it. Because now we get the bait. People have to say to you sometimes, you know, so you are shame. And I hit it around again. And me grew up in the country knowing that when you see a person with big belly, a rich somebody that. Rich. So me say when me grow up, me say, me now stop till my belly big. Because me want to rich. And when me grow up now, me realize say, I never really rich, they're rich. I eat them, I eat properly. And things just get out of hand. So those people now identify on the road 4:30 a morning time. I try to get it off. Right, brother? What time you go? 5 o'clock. Question to the people over there. Anybody over there watch documentary? On TV, raise your hand for the documentary persons. So watch that. Nice. You know, if you want me upset, make me see documentary and go on. Me don't like documentary. Because the thing when them come from the way, in a Jamaica, that have nothing to do with me. You turn on your TV, 11 o'clock, documentary and go on. You see one man in a one desert, and one giraffe, way down south. One white man, a black man, now know that, you know. One white man, and you see, that's a documentary on through TV in a Jamaica. And you see white man, the giraffe coming here. He's walking nicely the southern wall with his head put through. He's coming towards the small ones. They have a way to greet each other. And you notice they put his front foot out. And it's indication that they were not away. They're going to greet each other now. Now, that don't have nothing to do with me. We don't want that. We want things that affect me. We don't have desert. We don't have giraffe. Sure we affect me. Make when you turn on the TV, you see one long line of traffic. And when you look, you see one taxi and shot. And just come straight up right up and turn sideways. Show me that, and that we have to deal with. Show it. And then now, the narrator is talking, and And you see one next taxi, flyer come up fast. And the narrator said, though he's coming this fast, he can stop at any time. And the narrator can also, you see the stoplight and green, and the taxi will come. And the narrator just warn you and say, he's going to let out the passenger right here. And if you listen good, you can hear him say, take here, sir, take here, sir, take here, sir. And they let him off right there, and the passenger come out, throw away the bike, and come, and they tell us, the narrator said, if you have your phone on your left side, move it to the right. Failure to do so, you may go home phoneless. If you have your bag, arm up yourself, muscle up, let him see that you're not weak fence. Walk strong. Show me these things. What you are doing, camel in a desert car. And none of them think they affect you, ladies and gentlemen. But we have to clap your hands for our taxi drivers. Oh my God. They are the best. Jamaica have the world most creative taxi drivers. As a matter of fact, we have to give them credit. Jamaica full of church. You know that, right? Everywhere you go in church. And you see pastors, they don't lead the nation into prayer like taxi drivers. Everybody you see a driving and them a pray. Do Lord, let me reach one seat. And sometimes you can see people facial expression, they never pass you. Pray for me, for me to show me how to come out alive. And then it leads me to say we have the wrong people driving the wrong thing. Me feels that the government must ban all taxi man from driving taxi and just take them on and just make them drive hearse. And make the hearse drivers drive taxi. From me born to my world, me never see a hearse overtake yet. Never. Hearse take it time and leave out, and it take it time and drive no way to go. And taxi man overtake around corner and cuss you. Come on the road! And sometimes the passenger them look at you like you're wrong. How you not give me make it pass around the corner? Our taxi drivers, they are genius. You put your clothes on and you're going half a tree, you don't tell nobody where you are. And taxi man roll up to you. And say, you may have wait pan, figure away. When you want to try me, go, oh, you know that, oh, you know that. They're different, you know. Me feel the government, our taxes are like Jesus Christ. Yes. The place they pass us, only God alone could pass us, and not the way. And they squeeze past and just flash forward. They are different. Clap them again, ladies and gentlemen. And we're moving on now to our, sir. Just stand, you can speak loud, right? But where's the best place to see? To see? Nice shower. So I see you going to shower, go see. Talk. What you going to shower to do? Sing and be where you going. Be careful now, you know. And we know so the water cold, so at least we know where you keep up. All right, so you said the best place to sing is in the shower. Anybody agree with him? The shower? The best place to sing is at church. At church, let me tell you something. You know if you can sing at church. Anybody can sing at church. You go up and you start a song and you can't manage it, you just get that spirit and down. And everybody see the Holy Ghost take over life. You just put it on the song and you don't go. You left the church and worship. The vocal card and kill you. And them say pastors have it hard at church. And the pastors have it hard at church. You know the musician. For some people go start one song and them the card they don't come in and music book, you know. And I turn on and look at the musician like how it don't start here. And if I said then I wouldn't be find this card here. It's a G. And you know we are K. We different. And Jamaica is the only place where one man and travel the world favorite artist and he can't sing. Simple question he asked, and he never sorry that represent Jamaica. You want breadfruit, Mr. Just tell me if you want breadfruit. You want breadfruit? Just tell me if you want. Go side fry. And in Ghana, foreigners, them are artists. No foreigners, you are pretty. Just say if you want to. And people will come out to see. Just to ask one question. And I hear say about one song, if you go research the song. No word in a song apart from yes. 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 That's all in a song. And I hear people dancing. Ghana did it when Czec did have lyrics. They don't understand the point. And done. We have the best. We have the best. We have in Club Jamaica. And also, we have the best of everything. As a matter of fact, we never wanted to record this. But we have to say, gentlemen, clap the Prime Minister. Oh my word. We have the best Prime Minister in the world. Do you believe that? We have the best Prime Minister in the world. Matter of fact, this Prime Minister that Jamaica have now, I love this Prime Minister because one thing I can say, Jamaica is in good nursery. First time you could say the country is in good hands. You can say Jamaica is in good nursery now. Our Prime Minister, he can sense what is going on, He senses a little crime and drop us also. Can you imagine if the Prime Minister catch COVID or sneeze? It would be pretty, It would be pretty. And me know that he's the most creative. He believes in transformation. No other Prime Minister has ever done what Mr. Holness has done. Mr. Holness is the only Prime Minister that believes in transformation. As I speak to you, he is the only Prime Minister that I see move Hagley Park Road and put on the back of Sea View. No other Prime Minister never do that yet. And then their transformation. But a matter of fact, you see, if you drive down the road, round this up, all of your vehicle broke down, don't stop. In a night, don't have a vehicle, don't stop. Drive safely because you're going to get from all uncertain person. The best Prime Minister, the best. We have to clap him. We have to clap him. I know, you really are glad. You really are glad. All the Prime Minister, sorry saying Prime Minister right now. They don't really want to be Prime Minister this time. The Prime Minister, he gave the country $10,000 to COVID. Everybody wants to take it and grab a party. Now they are quiet. No one can even take that.
Csec Biology, a big cover page. In today's lesson, we will add an experiment to see how invertebrates respond to a stimulus, or one might say, toxin. We'll be using wood lice, millipedes, and earthworms. The response of these organisms are usually the same.
Now stop until they say who? The principal. You see the day they get the work? And then come and they say, "Kia, nothing there today." They know he didn't want to when you want to work. Why you don't want to see back getting over? That's how we say with boss, We don't know we just anybody ever just go like when the principal their school every day, sir. You would man look how you see parking lot just vacant. In gone. Where so we stay, anywhere you work. Boss stuff in the day anytime. But when you want to see boss? Friday evening, every minute you pass by, I look at him in the day. I say, I'm going to see man in one. But the other time, you don't want to see him. You don't want to see him. Miss, I know you're intelligent. Come here. Clap our ladies and gentlemen. Come, my friend. Nice. Beautiful. No, I want a bigger round of applause for her. Nice. Very brave to come up. You have to put on a mask, You can't move it with me. We'll leave it. Come. Come on, son. Good afternoon. How are you? Which subject you teach? IT. Use it in a sentence.
I teach IT.
Nice. So this is simple. I teach IT. So many I teach IT. You know it. Come. You know who is the past president? Who's the past president of Jamaica?
Do they have a name?
Douglas. Make that a history you teach. And as IT. You can look at me now. I'm not ashamed to say this. When I used to go to high school, I way up in a grade 6, I started learning to read and write. And I tell you why. First time used to hot. And one class of 45 people and one teacher. And when we play lunchtime and come back in, everybody hot. And the class get extra hot. So every lunchtime, me used to get in a trouble. And the teacher rolled me out. I said, go to the principal. That was very nice. You know why? Because the only place the AC was in the principal office. So when they go to the principal, and in there we go. And sometimes I could have nice when we go in the principal business. Is you again? Stay over there in that corner. You go on the AC, I'm moving shirt. I'm fans up. But that's how they want to go. So me learned late. And that was very good for me. Because you see, the later you learn at school, you became the latest. So when graduation and thing, I feel me there one car. And the boy when in grade 1 fly, and grade 2 fly. Me become the latest. Because everybody say, most improved. You know who again that? I mean, you're latest. Me pick out everybody when they got on early. You must have anything I do, come late. You hear? Come late. You hear something? Your mind already? You wouldn't know anything about that.
Sir, you know, sir.
Everybody know, sir. Please don't tell us. Turn to yourself and that. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that when you are sleeping, you and your wife talk to each other in your sleep? You never know. Ladies, did you know that when you are sleeping, you make sound? I can't tell you what you say. When ladies are sleeping, you can listen to your wife tonight. And you hear them when they sleep. You know what they say? Money. 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 And the man respond and say, go walk. Go walk. Listen tonight. If you don't have the twice, right? Money and go walk. So where's your wife now, sir? Huh? At home. At home. You have neighbors nearby? You live good with them? All right. You know it's always good not to surprise your wife. Did you know that? Well, I tell you what, I have a friend who put in trust and confidence in his wife so much that one day he gets early relief from work and he said, "I'm going to go surprise her." When he reached home, I'm best friend him still later in a bed beside his wife. He was so shocked, he took out his gun and boom! And shot him at the wife. Says, "You can't like that, you make you laugh all your friend them." It's all right. You can go. Tap, ladies and gentlemen. My friend, know you know. Don't just call straight, video call. And you tell her to talk to you from under the bed. And most time under the Sunday, you know, look at me, man. And you say, baby, go behind the door and talk to me from behind the door. Every little area, talk to me from that cousin, video call me. Nice something to hear. So make me talk and view there today. Nice, hello. Be a help you, man. It's a marriage counselor here. Say, baby, we will talk different today. Go in the closet and turn on the light and talk to me from in there. And turn the phone so and so. You know them way? Nothing can hide for you. Nothing can hide for you. Nothing can hide. You take my advice, huh? You want to come and call her, video call her public? It's all right. Come the gentleman, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say to you that laughter is the best. Come a little louder. Laughter is the best what? Medicine. But in closing, I did not like the way how some persons laugh. It's not healthy. They don't laugh like that. Laughter is like a standard vehicle. You know, stop yourself. You have to gear it down. You can't laugh so loud and just stop like that. You mash up your chest. You have to gear it down. Every good laugh, every boy. Mind your glasses. You can't see if you take it up. You can't see if you find your glasses. Remember, I tell you this, you know. The most difficult thing we find your glasses. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have three different ways to laugh. You have the first laugh is called the slapping laugh. You go with your friend and you get a joke, and before him laugh, he slap you, was like, oh! He not care will catch you. And you have this laugh is called the pushing laugh. You get the joke, you push you first. The third one is called the worrying laugh. You see two friends standing over here so talking, and when you look at see one of them run off, and you think that's something wrong. No, that's something tell him right this up. And they were sweet to me, run over this up, and then you run come back right this up and laugh. And this happens to all of us. You go to a function and you reach late, and when you step inside, everybody laugh. And guess what you do? You laugh too. You know, not them a laugh for you, but you laugh, and when they done, you turn to the person beside you and say, wow. That's how laughter works. But ladies, anything happen to you in life, just laugh. Just laugh. I want to wish you all the best for the new school term. You know, with a teacher, about one thing we miss. Because my school now, and the garrison area. One thing we miss. You know, long I don't part of fight. Long time. Take that time to change. First, I used to say to the children, get home safely. Everybody, they will look for you. And they must say, sir, get home safely. Everything changed. And everything is online now, and we have to just work with what we have. I'm not really excited about the online thing because from that boy we shop online. And that boy I say to Elizabeth, and my mother can go to Santa Cruz, and online we shop. We go in the market, the vendor they have things up and you can pay power online. And you just find where you want. And then just take a stick and do some boom! And take it out. That green shirt there. And then you take a boom and take it out and you try it out right there. Sometimes you buy online now when the things then come, it's sharp. Can't fit you. When time the world we are shop online, you know why? We see the goods right before we touch. Online. So ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure and a joy being here. All the best for this term, and may the results for the exam blow your mind. Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening. All right, thank you for having me, sir. How are you? Tina Mill? Tin Mill? Betty Mill? You need a home sweet home lampshade now.
Csec Biology, the cover page. In today's lesson, we will be looking at an experiment to see how invertebrates respond to a stimulus, or one might say toxis. We'll be using woodlice, millipedes, and earthworms. The response of these organisms are usually the same. They are usually found in a particular habitat, which is common to all three organisms. Now, this experiment will summarize what happens when organisms are exposed to a dry condition and a moist condition. To create that dry condition, we have used calcium chloride, or silica gel could be used. We're using a choice chamber that was made, but a real choice chamber looks something like the diagram to the right of your screen. It's like two petri dish, one with partitions in the bottom and the other with a hole in the top, and they would be placed on each other like it's shown here. So this is what it would look like if we were supposed to open it. 4 partitions at the bottom, a hole at the top, and when we close it should look something like this. But we're using one that we made, and hence we can see what is happening. So here we're using, particularly for this experiment, the earthworm. But the response of the earthworm is going to be similar to that of the woodlice and the millipede. We started the experiment with about 8 earthworms. You could count, you might find 9. So count, make sure that you're doing the counting so that your observation is what it should be. Now, you're going to be required to document this information after this experiment. Now, the earthworms are collected from a compost heap, or you could get the millipedes or woodlice from a compost heap. Ensure that no organism is harmed should you be carrying out this experiment at school. You are going to return the organisms after you would have completed the experiment. Now, this experiment is pretty much the mean of what was actually done. There was actually 3 samples that was carried out, and this experiment, like we've said, represents the mean or the average of what we observe. So you would be able to fill your table out nicely. This is, like we said, the mean. We would have carried out this experiment 3 times. And you will recall that it is very important that you carry out an experiment more than once, so that you can rid yourself of what is called conformational bias, or one might say chance result. You don't want to do it one time to say that you have arrived at a conclusion, because that would not be correct. It could be considered to be a chance result. So you want to ensure that when you're doing an experiment, you repeat the experiment so as to improve the accuracy of the result. So we're using calcium chloride, which is a desiccant, a drying agent. It is removing moisture from the air. Or we could use silica gel. Silica gel is found in most brand new shoes. You'd find it in a sachet in your shoes. And of course, in the shoes, it does pretty much the same thing. It removes moisture from the shoes so as to ensure that the shoes would serve long, and of course carry that wonderful fragrance of a new shoes. So you're seeing water on one side to ensure that there's adequate moisture on that side, and it is separated by a mesh, the mesh there in black and white, so as to ensure that the condition that is sought at is maintained. If we were using the choice chamber, we would use some similar, we'd use like cotton or something like that, and we would simulate the environment. Now be mindful that we are simulating here what would have been a natural environment for the organism. So we want to see how the organism would respond to various stimulus. We talk about taxis. Now, taxis is that response of the organism where it tries to move to an environment that is pretty much in line with its habitat. And it's usually moving towards a stimulus or moving away from a stimulus. Here, the organism might be moving towards the dry side or towards the moist side. So the common words here would have been stimulus, response, and of course taxis for a lot of students might be a new word. And of course you want to look at that when you write the lab up. You want to also be able to explain why some organism would have moved more than others, and some organism kept moving from one side to the other, and some actually stayed where they were and pretty much moved but little. Right? Others would not have moved. They would have been there for the entire experiment and they would not have moved. So it's going to be a little difficult probably for some student to count the number of organisms here, but it's very important that you count the organism. Don't rely on what's written to the side. 8 organisms were used or were placed in the choice chamber. Count the organisms that are in the choice chamber so that you can be accurate. Your teacher will be looking at the diagram, so you really don't want to get it wrong. And you want to explain. It's very important for you to explain why the organisms responded the way they did. Of course, you are observing here that not all the organisms are responding to the stimulus the same way, but indeed there is some response taking place. There are some organisms you'd see just sitting there, not moving. The conditions seem not to have fazed them, while there are others which are really, really agitated. They are moving up and down, round and about, trying to make themselves comfortable. So you want to ensure that you are paying attention. Now, there's a table that will come after the experiment. You want to be able to fill that table out, and your teacher might ask you to fill the information or to summarize what happened here using a pie chart to say which side of the choice chamber the millipedes prefer, or the woodlice prefer, or the earthworm prefer. And of course, they might ask you to use a timing. At what point, right? To say what point with the organism, that type of a thing. So it's very important that you are observing the experiment. So there we have the organism. There we had pretty much almost the same number on the moist side as we had on the dry side. What we observe is that there is a mass movement from one side to another. Make sure that you would have observed that. On your Csec examination paper, it is usually choice chamber that looks like the petri dish that is on the paper. You must be able to observe and be able to simulate, making one side suit the particular condition that you would need for your experiment. As we have said, some of these organisms continue to move. As to why they are moving, you are going to need to explain that in your final write-up. Your teacher will determine what skill is being assessed here. So you're going to need a table to document this information, and be mindful, a table should have a suitable title, and the title should be descriptive of what is in the table. Cells that are to be filled out will be left empty, but those that are not to be filled out, they should have a dash or blank within the cell. So here we're suggesting that probably you could have started the experiment with 8 organisms for all the particular sides. And of course, depending on what you're testing for, in this experiment we were looking at dry and moisture, but we usually look at other taxes to include these that are listed here. And then, like we said, you should carry out at least 3 samples, 1, 2, 3, to ensure that you avoid what is called conformational bias or chance result. Thanks much for watching. Please be reminded to like, share, and subscribe. When you subscribe, remember to hit the notification bell and select all, so you will be informed as soon as there is a new product available. Ethanol emulsion test with Mr. Wilson. We are testing for fats and lipid, and it comes to you from Csec Biology, the cover page. There we have the tubes labeled. Label tube A has alcohol or ethanol in it. Label tube W has water in it, and label tube O has oil or the food substance to be tested in it. There on screen we have the apparatus material to be used. Test tube rock, 10 ml measuring cylinder, ethanol or alcohol, food substance to be tested, distilled water, and of course paper tape that we have used to label the tubes. Here we are adding 7 ml of alcohol to 5 ml of cooking oil, And we're going to be shaking the mixture vigorously, but we're not going to be shaking it as long as it should. You will observe the difference in the color when we would have shaken it, but not as long as it should be shaken. Now, this is what it looks like, not properly shaken. We're going to be adding this to the water. It's 5 ml of water, and we're going to make an observation here. Now, if you observe here, the color that we are getting is not the color that is anticipated for a ethanol or alcohol oil mixture. So we'll do it again to show you what the positive test would have looked like. So we're going to be using the same volume for both ethanol or alcohol, whichever, and oil, pretty much the same. This is what it looks like when we would have done it a second time. So that is the mixture well shaken. And we're going to be adding that to 5 ml of water. And you will observe what happens when we add this mixture to water. So we're going to be adding it now to 5 ml of water. Please make your observation. All right, so you need to record what will happen now. Look at what happens. All right, so at the bottom there, it's the water, and at the top, we have the mixture of ethanol or alcohol and oil. You probably want to say why it's seated at the top and why the water is at the bottom. Please be reminded to like, share, and subscribe. And when you do, hit that notification bell. Csec Biology, the cover page. In today's lesson, we will find out if carbon dioxide is produced during respiration. We're going to be using a mouse. Of course, it's a mouse from a lab. And when you set up for this lab, you should not use a wild rat. Of course, the organism must be returned unarmed. For this experiment, no organism was hurt. The procedure for the experiment, you are going to get yourself a rat from a laboratory. You're going to set up the apparatus as shown, labeled A, B, C, D. As soon as that is done, your pump is going to be set at a rate of 1 to 3 bubbles per second, and it will be turned on at once. You are going to ensure that the setup is done properly, and you're going to be observing for changes in the jar, of significant change in jar D. Please ensure that you note the color change. Now for jar B, we're using lime water, which is the same thing as calcium hydroxide, but we could have also used hydrogen carbonate indicator. Now the hydrogen carbonate indicator tend to be a red color with atmospheric air. However, as the carbon dioxide level increases, that would have changed to somewhat orange-yellow thereabouts. So we could use the indicator as hydrogen carbonate instead of lime water. Now, we're using in the first jar potassium hydroxide, that's in jar A, and just above that in the tube we have, of course, soda lime. For your assessment, you might want to say why these were used in the experiment, as you'd say why the calcium hydroxide was used in the experiment. We're going to start the experiment now, and of course you need to pay keen attention so that you can pick up the color changes, and of course you'll be guided by your teacher as to the expectation in completing this lab. This lab is particularly geared for the Csec, CXC, SBAs, virtual labs for 2021. Let's get into the lab. So we're looking for color changes. Remember, at any time, you can pause the video. At any point, you can replay the video to ensure that your observations are correct. Please be reminded to like, share, and of course, subscribe to the channel. And when you do, hit that notification bell and select all. Waiting for jar D to complete change. We're using lime water, and of course a positive test for carbon dioxide is of course lime water turning milky. Some would say a milky white precipitate. So we are at the end of this experiment. Make sure you would have seen all that happened in the experiment, so you'll be able to write up your lab and of course score full marks. Good luck from Csec Biology, the cover page. Csec Biology, the cover page. Today we'll be testing for reducing sugar. These include glucose, fructose, and of course, maltose. We'll be looking at the presence or absence of reducing sugar. The skills that can be tested, ORR, MMAI, and teachers are reminded only 2 skills are to be tested for any particular experiment. The aim is as stated. Apparatus material and reagent, they are color-coded below. Before we started this experiment, we actually heated the water. Also, we added 1 drop of Benedict solution, and we're going to add another 2 drops to the test tube. Though we heated the water, we want to ensure we maintain that temperature above 60-65 degrees Celsius thereabout. So we're going to just apply a little more heat. Now the tube is placed in a hot water bath. So there we lit the Bunsen burner with the splint. And just ensuring that we maintain that temperature we started out with. We actually heated the water before we started the experiment. All right, we could turn off the flame now. Now, to the bottom left of the screen, you would observe blue. The blue suggests that there is no reducing sugar evident. Green or yellow-green or dark green, there's trace, as you are seeing on the screen now. There's trace of reducing sugar. We're expecting the change to be as is listed here. So you would have observed in A, B, and C, we're getting that change. Water is still hot, steam going up there. And we're having an orange color change to say that some amount of reducing sugar is detected. Moderate somewhat. Nice orange color as the color moves into the brick red precipitate. That suggests that there is large amount of reducing sugar. The precipitate is formed as the Benedict solution reacts with the content of the tube to form a solid product we call a precipitate. And of course, the Benedict solution is blue because of the copper ion there. We would have observed for the sucrose solution that it has not changed. It maintained the color of the Benedict solution. And this is going to be the test for reducing sugar, or Benedict's test. This is the only lab, food test lab, that is required by the Csec to be recorded in a table. Remember, a table should have 4 sides. We should not repeat the unit in the cells. It should have a header row and a header column. And also your table should have a descriptive title of what is in your table. Where there are blank spaces in the table that will not be used, a dash should be used in this space. Now you're going to be using this space to fill out the rest of the information that you have there in the experiment. So you're going to be looking at the other food substances and the procedure, observation, and inference, and so forth. Here, the inference, of course, would capture your discussion and your conclusion. Thanks much for watching. Please be reminded to like, share, and subscribe. When you subscribe, be reminded to hit that notification bell and select all. Tell us in the comment, did you find this experiment helpful? Csec Biology, the cover page. In today's lesson, we'll be looking at the Buret Test. Topic, the food test, skills that can be tested, ORR, MM, and AI. Teachers are reminded that only 2 skills are to be assessed for any experiment. The aim is as stated, apparatus, material, and reagents. They are color-coded below. A positive test for protein is purple, lavender, or violet. To carry out this experiment, it's very important for us to gently shake the tubes. We're going to be using 3 drops of sodium hydroxide, 3 drops of copper sulfate per solution. Solutions being used, 5 ml milk solution, pea solution, egg albumin solution, and glucose, as is written below the tubes. Let's start the experiment. We're testing for protein. It's called the Buret Test. That's the first drop of sodium hydroxide. Second drop of sodium hydroxide. Third drop of sodium hydroxide. Now we'll be adding the copper sulfate. First drop of copper sulfate. Second drop of copper sulfate. And there you observe the color changing to purple. Third drop of copper sulfate. And we'll shake the tubes gently. You would have observed the milk solution has changed to purple. The pea solution has changed to purple. The egg albumin has also changed to purple. The glucose solution, however, took the blue color of the copper sulfate. Now we have to record this information in a table. This lab is the only lab required by CXC to be written in a table. A table must have a descriptive title, which is usually written above the table in uppercase and underlined. So here we have table showing results from protein tests or the Buret test. The table should have a header row and a header column. Here we have the row, here we have the column. The unit should not be repeated in the cell. And of course, cells are not supposed to be left blank. Where there is a blank cell, there should be a hyphen in that cell so that data will not be entered by error. So this is an example of what is expected in the write-up. The milk solution We use 3 drops of copper sulfate, 3 drops of sodium hydroxide. The observation is that this particular solution changed to purple, and our conclusion and discussion, which is captured in the inference, is that protein is present in this mixture. Thanks much for watching. Please be reminded to like, share, and subscribe. When you do, remember to hit that notification bell and select all, so you will be informed as soon as there is a new post. Tell us in the comment, what is a positive test for protein? What's that color? Testing for starch, virtual lab, food tests, skills that can be tested, ORR, MMAI. Teachers are only allowed to test 2 skills per experiment. Aim, to determine nutrient found in various food substances. Apparatus, material, reagents, they are color-coded below. Three drops of iodine has been used to a 5 ml mixture, as seen below the tubes. Color change indicated beside the tube. This lab is the only lab for the Csec bio exam that is required to be written in a table. Hence, one must be cognizant of what is to be done when a table is required. A table should have a title, which is usually written in uppercase. Header rows, as seen here. Header column. The unit must not be repeated in the cells, so here we have the unit. It's not repeated in the cells. A table must have 4 sides. Where a cell will not be used, a dash, or what you'd call an hyphen, must be used in that space. It should not be drawn on the margin of your page. Please watch the video and complete the table. An example is given above. Thanks much for watching. Please be reminded to like, share, and subscribe. When you do, remember to hit that notification bell. And we're still at home for COVID, but I'm going to be doing this lab. I do not have a balance to measure this salt, but you can see the salt there. And those are my little specimen jar. I have measured the water already, but again, I will measure the water using this measuring cylinder. And I'm going to be using the computer for the stopwatch. So we have a Irish potato, the metal core that we'll use to get this sample of a potato, our white tile. So let's get started. Get the volume of water. This water was already measured. We're using 86 ml of water. And for those persons, it is said that we're supposed to use a white background, but for me it works better using the screen background. So you really don't want to do that. You want to go exactly in front of the screen that you're reading. So yes, we still have 86, and we're going to be adding it to the sample of salt. So this solution is going to be concentrated. So you would have seen the salt there as the solute, and of course the water as the solvent. I don't have all the apparatus to do the experiments, so I'm using what I have. So there we go. And then we're going to measure another sample of water using the same measuring cylinder. And we're using 86 ml of water for both samples. And again, I go down and remember we're looking for the meniscus. That's a curved surface just below the water, the top of the water. I like to call it the thickness of the water, just below the thickness at the top there. If you were using like oil, you would have seen that very, very easily. But we're using water. So we want to ensure that the salt, the sodium chloride, is dissolved in the water before we get started. Now what we're going to do, we're just going to be using a piece of the potato. We're going to be measuring the length, and we're going to be looking at the texture, and of course, I would say how easily the potato will bend. Now this is going on very nicely because the salt is dissolving in the water. Remember we spoke sometime about solute and solvent. Alright, so there we go. The stirring would have increased the rate at which it would have dissolved. So that's out there. So we are finished with the measuring cylinder for now. And we could put away these two sample containers and get right into we won't need the background anymore. But this time we're going to need a ruler. And remember that we're measuring using centimeter. Now to use the core, all that we do is two pieces. We're just going to shove the core in, pull the core out, and then we're going to be using this and just shove it inside like how it didn't come out. Alright, so we have to be careful. Alright, so in most cases, so there it's coming out. It's like a worm, it's pretty flexible now. You can see pretty flexible. And we're going to get another piece of that. Alright, and there it's inside. Let us see if we'll get it out. Alright, good. So probably we could just pull it out like this, or we could just use this and shove it out just to see it. Now what we want to do, I have no predetermined length, so the workable length here, I will just use that. So we're going to cut off the inch to ensure that it is somewhat even here. And then we're just going to line up, and we're going to be using, one might want to know which of the sample is the salt solution. So I'm going to be labeling one salt. Always remember to do that. Always remember to label all the time. If you don't label, you could find yourself in serious problem. You might have to do over the entire lab. So remember to label. So that one is labeled salt, and of course I'm going to be labeling the other one just H2, water, H2. Right? We have inches and we have centimeter. We're going to be using the centimeter. And remember, we have at the end of the scale, we have to pay attention there. We're going to start from where the scale begins. That is the mark on the scale, not the actual length of the ruler. So we're starting right here at this black mark. And we're going to be using 4 centimeter. And there we go. Alright, so that is out. Alright, my son wants to be a part of the thing. Alright, good. So I want to look here. Look at this here. Pretty flexible. And it's somewhat rough. It's really rough. It's not smooth and it's flexible. Same thing here. Rough. It's really moist, so we'll probably want to just dry it off a bit. Dry them off a bit. And dry it off a little bit there, and then we're going to immerse them at the same time in both solutions. So there we go, and we are going to start the timer. Alright,
Alright, so here we go. It's the same timing, so the little time that is lost is not too significant here for this particular experiment. But we want to try as much as possible to ensure when you're working in your groups at school to ensure that you are starting on time. Now we're going to be timing this and then we're going to tell you and show you what the result will be. We're going to be giving it a time. Remember, we are using the length of a potato. We use 4 centimeters. The volume of the water was 86